Hey everybody, thanks so much for joining us on another episode of Killer Bites. Today I'm covering one of the wildest cases I've ever read up on. Of course, this person might not come to mind when you think of a stereotypical killer. Still, she definitely contributed to multiple deaths because of her dishonesty. Her name? Elizabeth Holmes. Elizabeth Holmes was born on February 3rd, 1984 in Washington, D.C. At 9 years old, Elizabeth told her family about her big dreams of becoming a billionaire. While I'm sure lots of children have dreams about being rich and famous, Elizabeth was determined to make it happen for herself. The thing is, Elizabeth's family came from old money and were not poor by any means. She spent time abroad in China, and while there, she sold C++ compilers to universities. Essentially, the compilers read computer codes and translated them. Within Elizabeth's first year at the school, she became a President's Scholar, which earned her a $3,000 stipend to go towards her chosen research program. This is when Elizabeth reached out to a professor at the university to pitch her newest idea. Phyllis Gardner was a professor of medicine with a background in business and marketing. Elizabeth told her an idea of a skin patch that can detect diseases, which Phyllis thought was fantastic, but scientifically impossible. In 2003, Elizabeth sent in a patent application for this idea. But this was discouraging for Elizabeth. She wanted her ideas to soar, but she tossed the skin patch idea and came up with something even better. This time she created a mock-up design of a machine that could run diagnostics for patients with just a few drops of blood. But again, Phyllis told Elizabeth that this idea would not freaking work. So Elizabeth found other scientific experts to get their thoughts on the matter. They all sided with Phyllis, stating that the vision wasn't possible in the scientific world. Elizabeth felt emboldened by their doubt. The summer after her freshman year, Elizabeth worked as a lab technician at the Genome Institute of Singapore, putting her Mandarin to good use. There, she worked on a computer chip that could detect the presence of SARS-CoV-1 in the body. After the summer was over, she returned to Stanford, hoping for another shot at her research program. Well, what do you do if more than one Stanford professor won't listen to your idea? Go and find the one guy who will. Elizabeth met up with Channing Robertson, the head of the science department. She gave him a rundown of the machine and her ideas, and Channing was blown away. Channing had dealt with thousands of students during his time at Stanford, but he knew Elizabeth was different. Channing was so impressed with Elizabeth that he left his tenured position at Stanford to help build and work for her new company, Real-Time Cures. He did this with no physical evidence that the machine even worked. Merely the idea. At that point, Elizabeth was feeling incredible. She had the blessing of a Stanford professor who believed so strongly in her idea and felt like her dream was finally becoming a reality. So, in 2003, Elizabeth dropped out of college at the age of 19 to head her new company, which she renamed Theranos. Theranos was the combination of the words therapy and diagnose. Their premise was that Elizabeth hated needles and despised getting her blood drawn. However, with her machine, one prick of the finger and one drop of blood could run hundreds of tests, even detecting cancer and high cholesterol. With her new invention, this would eliminate the need for invasive, scary syringes and testing and the highly monopolized market dominated by LabCorp and Quest Diagnostics. Channing, who was one of the only other employees at Theranos, introduced Elizabeth to tons of potential investors. She practiced her taglines, story, and the investors loved it. So much so that by 2006, Theranos raised over $6 million from prominent figures such as Rupert Murdoch, Larry Ellison, and Tim Draper, to name a few. Elizabeth's uncle was diagnosed with skin cancer when she was very young, and it spread rapidly. If he could have detected the problem sooner, he might still be alive. So the mission statement for the company was creating early diagnosis so that no one has to say goodbye too soon. As Elizabeth was building her company, people noticed a few things about her. One, Elizabeth wore the same black turtleneck all the time, much like her idol Steve Jobs, and even took multiple employees from Apple. Two, she spoke in a deep, baritone voice when in public. Many believed her voice to be fake. However, her family denied these claims and remained firm in their stance that it was authentic. Many people debate that Elizabeth put on this kind of voice to be taken seriously in a male-dominated industry. 3, everything about her and the company were incredibly private. She made it clear to investors that she would not tell them about the technology at Theranos. In turn, she would take their money and use it in whatever way she saw fit. The company didn't even have a freaking website until 2013, when Theranos started coming out in pharmacies across the country. The thing is, once more and more people joined Theranos, it didn't take long until they started to suspect Elizabeth and this supposed game-changing technology of hers. She was making moves, people, all while never disclosing any information about the technology. That was until the science department at Theranos started to realize that the machines were not going to work, and employees started leaving due to toxic work conditions. For example, Elizabeth expected all of her employees to have that same rise and grind attitude that she did. At one point, she started catering dinner to the office at 8 in the evening to encourage people to stay longer and work harder. Elizabeth's office was made out of bulletproof glass, and she was driven around in a black Audi protected by bodyguards. She had all guests sign an NDA before they were allowed into the building and required security to the bathroom. In addition, she had her assistants track when people arrived at the office and when they left. In 2009, Elizabeth started running out of money. That's when Sunny Balwani came into the picture. Sunny had met Elizabeth when she was 18 years old at the summer program she attended. He was 20 years her senior. Sunny gave Elizabeth $13 million and was promptly named the COO and president of Theranos. Everyone was super confused as to why this man with no experience in the field held one of the highest positions in the company. Sunny was intensely disliked by other Theranos employees and only added to the company's already tense, toxic environment. That was when it was revealed that the two were in a relationship. So eventually, investors stopped by the lab to check out the Edison, which they called the testing machine. First, a technician would take their blood, put it in the Edison machine, and escort the investor out. Then, the lab technicians would empty out the machine, run the tests manually, and present those results as if they had come from the Edison. Why? Because the machine never worked. Sunny and Elizabeth felt it was okay to lie because they had until 2013 to perfect the technology. That was when Theranos was supposed to launch the Edison into Walgreens across the country. Unfortunately, the contract was already signed and it was too late to backtrack. And that is what we in the industry call telling a big old fib. Walgreens didn't know the machines were trash, but Elizabeth, Sunny, and the scientists at Theranos knew. However, anytime someone tried to bring this up to Elizabeth or Sunny, they were either fired or reprimanded. One of the scientists at Theranos named Ian Gibbons was utterly beside himself. He had a PhD from Cambridge and had been with Theranos since its beginning. He had tried everything in his power to get the machines to work, but had no luck. He knew that the machines were not ready for public use, along with many other scientists voicing similar concerns. Yet, again, anytime he brought this up to Elizabeth and Sunny, he was scolded and bullied. Elizabeth and Sunny were in a patent lawsuit. They needed Ian to testify on behalf of the company, swearing that the technology would work. But Ian was an honest man and hated his treatment at the company. His only options were lie on the stand to save Theranos, not testify and be fired by Elizabeth, or risk unemployment after working on this project for 9 years. In a horrible turn of events, Ian Gibbons took his own life. Now, you would think that if the head scientist at your company for the past 9 years, the one responsible for trying to get your terrible idea to work, takes his own life, you would at least send your thoughts to his family and loved ones, right? Well, if you're Elizabeth Holmes and Sunny Balwani, you do precisely the opposite. Instead, they reached out to Ian's wife, demanding she return any and all confidential materials. Now, Theranos has its big launch in Walgreens, was getting tons of publicity for this revolutionary technology, and started securing partnerships with Cleveland Clinic, Capital Blue Cross, and Safeway. This produced even more money for the company, which is exactly what they needed. By 2014, Elizabeth started appearing on the covers of magazines. She was recognized by Forbes as the youngest self-made female billionaire, ranking her 110 on the Forbes 400. At that point, Theranos was valued at $9 billion. Elizabeth had her name on 18 US patents and 66 foreign patents by the end of the year. Theranos had over 800 employees at this point. For Elizabeth, things seemed to be going very well. She was famous, rich, and had a successful company despite it being founded on lies, secrets, and inaccuracy. But in 2015, all of this would crumble. The FDA started investigating Theranos because the results from their tests were wildly inaccurate. A writer at the Wall Street Journal had a months-long investigation, talking to whistleblowers and ex-employees and recovering documents from the broken machines. Elizabeth, obsessed with security and secrecy, was furious when she discovered the investigations. The Wall Street Journal writer discovered that Theranos' blood testing machine, the Edison, consistently gave patients inaccurate results. This alone is bad, but what really threw things over the edge was that Theranos used the same machines that Quest Diagnostics and LabCorp used. Instead of the one drop of blood, patients still had to give vials of blood to get tested. The company was lying, using other traditional testing machines from other companies and playing it off as though they were revolutionary. They were anything but. The evening the Wall Street Journal was released, Elizabeth appeared on a television show to deny the claims. She said, "This is what happens when you work to change things. First they think you're crazy, then they fight you, and then all of a sudden you change the world." By 2016, Theranos was on every medical radar. The FDA, Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, and the SEC looked into the accusations. By October of 2016, Theranos shut down all of its wellness centers across the country and its own laboratories and dismissed 340 employees. Sunny Balwani stepped away from the company at the height of these allegations. It's unclear if he left on his own accord or if Elizabeth fired him. This is still up for debate. In 2017, the state of Arizona sued Theranos. They claimed that Theranos had sold over 1.5 million blood tests across the state while concealing inaccuracies. Theranos had to pay $225,000 in fines and attorney fees and pass out refunds for every test. An additional 155 employees were let go. By June of 2018, Elizabeth stepped down as CEO of Theranos, laying off 105 employees, leaving under 24 employees at the company. The same day Elizabeth stepped down, she and Sunny Balwani were charged with 9 counts of wire fraud and 2 counts of conspiracy to commit wire fraud. In an email sent in September of 2018, Theranos told its shareholders that the company was shutting down and would spend the rest of the year trying to repay them. While Theranos closed its doors, Elizabeth found love in a man named Billy Evans, a 27-year-old heir to a property management company in the state of California. The two were seen at the Burning Man Festival in Nevada in 2018. In 2021, Elizabeth Holmes started her criminal trial, where she pleaded not guilty to 11 counts of fraud. The trial lasted over 15 weeks, hearing from over 30 jurors, including a few whistleblowers from the company. In January of 2022, Elizabeth Holmes was found guilty of all 11 charges and faces potential jail time for up to 80 years. Sunny Balwani also faced the exact charges as Elizabeth and pleaded not guilty to all 11. Now Elizabeth is 38 years old. She lives in a 9-bedroom home in California, estimated at $135 million, with her now fiancé Billy and their new child. And there you have it, the wild story of Elizabeth Holmes, Sunny Balwani, and the disaster that was Theranos. Can you believe that this case is still going on? Well, my name's Allie, and thanks for watching Killer Bites. See you next time.